Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discuss what is a syndemic. What is a syndemic approach? All of you have heard of epidemic,
Sir,
endemic.
sorry. So sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Don't sir mention good morning or good evening. Just say hello to everyone. Huh?
Oh,
One
sorry.
must yes.
So,
I'm giving you.
yeah.
I
Sorry,
know
sorry.
I can understand, sir.
So you can start. Hello, everyone. We are now going to discuss what is a syndemic approach. The word syndemic is a Greek word. You all have heard of epidemic, endemic, pandemic, especially during COVID times. But what is syndemic? And why do we need to know it when we are talking of COVID 19? With this, I have no conflict of interest. The word syndemic comes from a Greek word. Syn means joining together, working together. Endemic is population, upon the people. So we need to change the approach. When we talk of syndemic, is we are talking of simultaneously two or more health problems which are linked. They're involving two or more affections. They're interacting synergistically to amplify the problem and contribute to excess burden of a disease in a population. So, two diseases, two conditions are coming together and they are going to create a larger impact than each individually alone. On your screen, you can also see a CDC definition of syndemic. As I said, there's no conflict of interest, and we, while we are approaching the syndemic, let's see the larger picture when we talk of syndemic. So, as you know, human beings are in the center. We have certain life related issues, behaviors. We have certain non communicable disease like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, all of which were very important comorbidities during COVID. We have the social factors, we have political and socioeconomic conditions, and we have a globalization process. But a larger picture is how human beings are interacting with their ecological society, human, animal, environmental interface. This is also a component of syndemic. In COVID times, we have to see all this in perspective of lockdown, perspective of public health, perspective of emergency governance, employment and social impact, fiscal, monetary, all this would add up together either to amplify or to dampen the effect of a disease. So, COVID 19 as a syndemic requires a syndemic thinking. We need to identify the factors that create and perpetuate health inequities. And when we talk of this, try to see the larger picture. We thought, just like plague, COVID 19 to be a infectious disease. So, infectious disease perspective sees SARS-CoV-2 as an agent. It affects the human being, creates a disease known as COVID 19, and then it leaves and the COVID 19 outcomes. What if we try to see this in a syndemic perspective? In a syndemic perspective, there is a lockdown, there's a mental health stress, the schools are closed, the parks are closed, the child cannot go to play, so he will eat more, he'll create an obesity. Now, this obesity will join hands with SARS-CoV-2 virus effect, COVID 19 effect. He is focusing on social media, so this is impacting his mental health. Diseases like diabetes, obesity, hypertension were existing, hospitals are closed, excepting for COVID. They are not getting treated. There's poverty, there's hunger, there's a loss of job, there's a change in the housing, employment, environment. All these issues, when you think collectively, That is what is syndemic. And when you think it, then you have that the COVID 19, the health disparities, the economic disparities, the systemic racism, all this would come together. And when you think of the broader environment, we know that the natural host was a bat, but now you can see that we interacted with the bat, its kingdom, its area. So huge number of things have come together, the stress, the lack of transportation during COVID times, the food insecurity, poverty. So when you simultaneously you study everything, there's something called simultaneous crisis. That's the public health response to COVID-19. And this is the reactive approach. So syndemic thinking brings together COVID-19 complex interactions with environment, with pre-existing diseases, with social inequalities, economic disparities, gender, racial, and religious discrimination, social policy, sexual violence, demographic density. Why is it that it was more in Bombay? Why is it was more in Calcutta, in Delhi? Because these are the areas where there's been huge migration for job, and the demographic density and the distribution is much more different. The housing and hygienic conditions are not the same. So the shift from assured health to insured health requires a syndemic thinking. So COVID-19 amplified, when you think together, you think not only of the agent, disease, and host, but you think of the larger environment, you think of other things, then you think that COVID-19 is like a mirror showing us what was our actual condition for any country, including India, and what is that major health shock. It creates as a tsunami, but there are always waves. It just amplifies that wave for you to see better, which is leading to displacement, sufferings, and death. And it's challenging the global thinking. Should you think in isolation of COVID, or do you have to have a political direction on public health dynamics and public innate rights to live with dignity and good health? There's a very interesting thing why syndemic approach is very important. I take you 100 years back, 1918. I took the cuttings from some newspapers. You'll find such a similarity, though there's a difference of more than 100 years. These are all from the newspapers which I collected, which talked about the Spanish flu in 1918. What it says: churches, schools, movies, saloons ordered closed. Public notice: wear a mask and save the life. Indian cure is the best. If you want to survive from the ravages of influenza, use Milton. But the best part of it I liked was the way to use VapoRub. So Vicks VapoRub got advertised in 1918, claiming that it is produce. So whenever there is a panic, whenever you are just trying to break it as a pandemic chain and not thinking the larger picture, such responses are going to come. These are emergency responses where people try to make maximum profit out of it. But the syndemic approach allows you to see the larger picture. So, in summary, 5.5 million people in the world have died. We have to confront the fact that we are taking far too narrow approach for managing COVID, more as a pandemic, more as an infectious disease. We are taking the plague model. We are trying to cut the lines of viral transmission. We have used masks, we have used hand wash, hand rub, we have used lockdown. Nothing has worked because the science that guided the governments was driven by epidemic modeling, by infectious disease specialists who understood the frame of a plague. But what we have learned so far is that the COVID-19 is not so simple. There are two categories. You have the adult population suffering from respiratory diseases, and you have an array of non-communicable disease. These two join hand together. This clustering with the social groups, which you have patterns of inequality deeply embedded. The aggregations of this on a background of social and economic disparity creates the larger picture, the larger wave, the shock. And this is syndemic. So Gentlemen and ladies, COVID 19 is not a pandemic, it is a syndemic. The syndemic nature of the threat we face means that a more nuanced approach is needed if we have to protect this planet and the health of our communities. The resources are mentioned. So, you all, thank you very much.
So I'm ending the broadcast 1 second.
Yeah.